All right, so we're going to go over in this video some ways to optimize our images. So we make our images as best as we can for our user experience on the internet. And what I mean by that is file size and maybe also making a transparent background, whatever all that means. So here we go. There is a free website called Photopea, Photopea.com, Photopea. And this is a very, very good knockoff of Photoshop. So it has a lot of very powerful tools that we can use, and I'm going to use them to demonstrate some ideas for you on this video. Okay, I do have some of this video or some of this screen off to the right because they do have a lot of ads, but that's what you get for free, right? So I'm going to scroll those over so they're not in camera view or in view of the video. All right, so the first thing I want to do is demonstrate something like file size. So I've given you some of the files, the images that I'm going to be working with, and all I'm going to do is drag it from my desktop. I'm going to drag the kitten into my desktop. And here is the first example that I would like to share. Oh, isn't it an adorable kitten? And I definitely want it on my website. So the thing I want to show you is this. If I go to image, and I look at image size, image and image size, and I look at how big this image is. So this image is 3,752 pixels wide and 2,500 pixels high. Well, that's a huge amount of pixels, and in my HTML, I can certainly make the width smaller. Like say I only want it to be 300 pixels wide by whatever. The problem with that is yes, it works, but we've still asked our user to download this huge file over the internet, which is bandwidth, and it's also going to cause the site to slow down some. So bad, in fact, that if you look at the size of this is 9.38 megapixels huge. So this is a very, very large file, and just because I'm making it smaller in my browser with my HTML, it's still being downloaded as a very, very large file. And it's going to take some time for it to download, and it might cost my users some bandwidth that they're paying for if they're on a limited data plan, for example. All of which is bad boogie. So what we can do here is I'm going to make my project smaller. So I'm going to make my width about what I want it to be naturally in my web page. If I want it to be 600 pixels, I'll make this 600 pixels. I might make it 600 pixels, and then maybe if I need to downsize it a little bit to a thumbnail, I can. But watch what happens to my image size when I hit tab. When I hit tab, of course it didn't show it. When I hit tab, it made my width and height proportionally correct. So now I'm going to hit on OK because I can see it got smaller. But now let's go back to image size. And now if I look at the image size, it didn't update right away, but look how much smaller that image is. So I still have the exact same quality and size that I would have downsized it to in my HTML, but now I'm asking the user, the browser of my viewer, to do a lot less work, and that's going to make my page load faster, and it's going to just be a better experience. I can click on OK, and then I have some tools here on the left hand side that I could play with. I'm going to click on this magnifying glass, and if I double click on it, then it's going to show it in real size. So this is what it would look like on my web page. So number one rule then is everything you can do to optimize this image size is going to make a better experience for your user. All right, so when I brought this image in, it looks like it's a JPEG.jpg. So you can also, of course, change it if you need to. So if I wanted to export it as, and here's your different web types. So the images that we would be concerned with on the internet would be a PNG, a JPEG, a WebP, PDF, we can, for sure. SVG, we're not going to get into in this video, but these are the main ones right now, PNG, JPEG, WebPs. And and GIFs, or GIF, whatever camp you want to be in, and I'm not going to get into an argument of how it's actually pronounced. We'll just assume that one or the other is correct. If you want to save it as a PSD, all that means is like a Photoshop file. And so if you had made a lot of edits and you want to save different layers, which is kind of outside of the scope of this particular video, but if you know anything about layering, you could save it as a PSD. So the important part is when you're saving these files that we export it as and then your appropriate file. So if you want to keep it as the JPEG, that's fine. But we'll look at reasons why we might want to change the format here with our next image. All right, so I'm going to close this one out, and I have unsaved work. That's okay. I'm going to bring over the stitch image that I gave you. And this particular one is a Webby. I think that's how they pronounce it. Webby. And the idea behind this particular file format, it's one of the newest formats, and it's one of the formats that is most efficient when it comes to what they call compressing the file or saving the file. And all we really care about right now is that it is a form that we can use, and it also supports transparent backgrounds. What do you mean by transparent backgrounds? Well, see how we have this stitch? And if we put stitch on our web page, we're going to see all of this white in the background. So let me demonstrate that. All right, so the magic of the movies, I just magically put up this page. So here is my index page, and here's my index page here in the browser. And I have an image, and I have image as stitched. You have to always make sure you put the background, remember, or the extension, WEBP, Webby, and the alt tag. We haven't learned this yet, but we're going to be learning it very shortly, and this is just how we give our page some color. So just take this at face value for the moment, that I've made this background color light blue. And the point that I was trying to make here is, if I have my image here on the page, that all of that white background is still showing, because images at the end of the day are always going to be square. But wouldn't it be nice if we could make this white part invisible so that the blue would show through and we don't have this awful white showing and kind of destroying the overall theme of my web page? So we can do that, and that's what I wanted to demonstrate next. And so I'm going to go back in here, and I guess I'm going to pull this back off screen so we don't have to see that. So here on this image, what we're going to do is I'm going to go over to this toolbar here, and the first thing I'm going to find is this little wand. And if I hold my cursor over it, it says Magic Wand, and that's the tool that I want to utilize. So we get extra tools all along here, and these are exactly the same thing you'd find in Photoshop. So if you're comfortable with Photoshop, then you have all of these tools you had in Photoshop. If you're not using Photoshop, or if you haven't before, there is an associated fee with it, which is why it's nice having this free knockoff. All right, so I'm going to click on this magic wand, and I have different choices, but I want the magic wand, so I could choose others if I knew how to use them. But I'm going to use the magic wand, and I'm going to come over here to my image, and I'm going to click on this white. And what you should see is, I'm not sure how easy it is to show up, but we call these marching ants. So there's all these dotted lines that are surrounding my little stitch guy, and they're actually highlighting all the white. So what I can do at this point is, if I hit the delete key on my keyboard, you're going to see the white disappear, and I have this checkered background. That checkered background indicates that it is invisible. I've effectively erased all of that white, and now I have an invisible or transparent background. So let me prove that theory to you. Recognize that the image is still square, and they will always be square. So if I needed to make this smaller, I could. I'll just kind of demonstrate that. So I can use the crop tool and maybe bring some of these edges in a little bit so I don't have such a wide square on my picture. So I could have something on my web page fit a little bit closer. So I'm going to hit my enter key. Excellent. All right, remember, I could still come up here to image and come down to image size and change the size if I wanted a stitch that was a little bit smaller. And I hit my tab key so this stays in proportion, and I'm going to click OK. All right, I'm going to hit Control D or Command D, depending on which operating system you're on, and that's going to make the little dots disappear. If you want to zoom in, of course, you can use your little magnifying glass. And so the bottom line is, at the end of the day, once I have it the way I want to file and export as, and this is the important part as far as choosing the right format. A GIF or a GIF will keep your transparent background. GIF or GIF is nice is when you have images that don't have a lot of color. So this image doesn't have a lot of different color, like a photo, for example. So this would be a good candidate for a GIF or a GIF. It is minimum colors, so I'm going to have a smaller file size, and it supports the GIF format. The other file formats that would support the transparent background are PNGs and Webbies. JPEGs do not support color transparent background. So if you have a photo and you have some background that you're making transparent, JPEG will not be your best choice. So kind of go over these again. PNG, JPEG, Webbies, all very good for photos because they have a lot of different colors in them. GIFs are good for images that don't have a lot of variance in color, like 256 color schemes, that kind of a thing. And then GIF, Webby, and PNG support the transparent background. So my best choice for this one is going to be the GIF or GIF. So I'm going to choose that one. I'm going to choose that, and then it double checks all of the things, and yes, that all looks good. I'm going to click save, and then it's going to save it in my downloads folder. So I know you can't see that on screen, but I'm going to go into my downloads folder, and I'm going to put this on pause. All right, so here's my downloads folder. It automatically goes into the downloads folder. So I'm going to grab that image that is supposedly optimized. I'm going to pull it over here. Now it was a Webby, so I could have kept it a Webby, but now I wanted to have two different versions. So Stitch WEBP Webby, you can see is, and I have it down here in my Visual Studio Code, was the big one, 768, 31 kilobytes, which wasn't bad, but I made it smaller and I also made it transparent. So I can see that with these square background, and I also made the image smaller, so it's a lot smaller than it was before. I think that was 31, not a lot smaller, but a little bit smaller. So this is the one I want to use in my document. So I'm going to go back to my index, and I'm going to change this to the GIF. And then I'm going to find my document here. So I'm going to right click, choose View in Browser, and I'm going to pull my document over so you can see that in fact now I have that transparent background. Recognize that that image is still a square, however, it's just not showing that background. I'm going to add one more little bit of information here, not with Photopea, but just in images itself, because I see this is a common mistake. So, and I'm going to try and help you not make that mistake. So I'm going to kind of bring out the point that maybe my stitch is still too big and I want to make it smaller. So I do have the ability here in my image tag to adjust the width. So let's say I want the width to be, I think it's currently, what did we decide, 300 pixels, and I actually want it to be 150 pixels. So I'm going to put 150 pixels in here. And it should in fact shrink down. Yay, it did, and everything seems peachy dory. Is that a word? Yep. But here's what I want to bring to your attention. I've been showing you how to validate. So I'm going to look at my validator down here in W3C validation. And if I look, it says that my document is not valid. So this is a good example of the browser still trying to help me out, but in fact, it's showing that this is an error. And what is the error? Well, let's see if we can figure it out. So I'm going to put my cursor over the error, and it says bad value 150 pixels for attribute width on element image. Expected a digit but saw a P instead. So that's a lot of words, but if you break it down, really what it's saying is for the attribute width, for our additional tag width, or not our tag, but our additional information that we supplied for our image tag, for our attribute. On image it said it's a bad value, doesn't like 150 pixels. It expected a digit but saw a P instead. So where did it see the P? It saw it here, and it expects digits and not the P. What it's trying to tell you, and it's maybe not crystal clear, is when you're putting a width here in the tag, you don't put PX. PX is assumed. And so in order to get your code to validate, you have to just put the value. Pixel is assumed. If we want to learn how to do things like maybe percentages instead of pixels, we'll get that into when we do CSS. But if we're putting an attribute, additional information inside our HTML tag, if it's a width, we don't put the PX value. We simply put 150. So let's go ahead and validate again and make sure that it validates. Yay, now my code is valid. So it's a good example of, even though it's showing up correctly, the browser tried to fix your mistake. If we validate, it's not validating correctly. And in this class, or anytime you do anything in programming, just because it looks like it works, but it doesn't work, or it's not correct, doesn't mean it's correct. So we want to make sure we validate. We want to make sure we leave the PX off. All right, that's my video on image optimization and a little side travel into making sure that our tags or HTML tags or image tags are valid.